Today, we're starting our reading on the table of contents. The table of contents is the page in the book where we find out what the book contains or what the contents of the book are. In a different video, I already read to you Everybody Works. That story started on page 3. Today, I would like to read to you The Elves and the Shoemaker. This story starts on page 31. The Elves and the Shoemaker is a traditional tale, or a fairy tale. That means that the story has been told many, many times for a long, long time in history. This particular fairy tale or traditional tale of the Elves and the Shoemaker started in the country of Germany on the continent of Europe. This story starts on page 31. The table of contents in this book is on page 1, so we'll need to turn several pages at the same time to get to the big number 31. I've turned several pages and now I'm on page 13 of the book. If I turn some more pages, now I'm on page 27 of the book. And finally, we're on page 31, where our story begins, The Elves and the Shoemaker. Have you ever heard of an elf before? This word, elves, is the plural, or meaning more than one, elf. Where have you heard of an elf before? That's right, Santa Claus has elves that help him. Think about what Santa Claus's elves do. Are elves usually helpful or hurtful? Usually elves that we hear about in other stories are helping Santa Claus to make toys. Look at this word, shoemaker. This is a compound word, two words put together to make one new word. The two words are shoe and maker. What do you think a shoemaker does? Well, if you look around at your friends right now, I think you'll see that there are lots of different kinds of shoes. But this story, when it was begun to tell, was in the distant past. And in the distant past, there weren't so many different kinds of shoes. Almost all kinds of shoes were made from leather. Leather might be what your dress shoes are made from. Leather comes from cow skins, and it's made to be very sturdy and to make strong shoes from. And the shoemaker would use a sewing machine and thread and a needle to sew the leather together in the shape of shoes. I wonder what elves or an elf have to do with someone who makes shoes. Can you make a prediction in your head of what you think the elf will have to do with the man that makes shoes, or the shoemaker? Well, let's read this traditional tale or fairy tale from the country of Germany to find out what the elves did and if they were helpful or if they were hurtful, and what they did that had to do with a shoemaker. The Elves and the Shoemaker is the title of this fairy tale. That means it's the name of the fairy tale. On the title, all of the important words start with a capital letter. A fairy tale from Germany. Once upon a time, there lived a poor shoemaker and his wife. What does poor mean? That means they did not have very much money. They had just enough leather for one pair of shoes. Tonight, I will cut the leather, said the shoemaker. In the morning, I will sew the shoes together." The next morning, the shoemaker and his wife found a beautiful pair of shoes on the workbench. This is a workbench. It's a bench or a table where the shoemaker can do his work. If the shoemaker and his wife were in bed, who do you think sewed the beautiful pair of shoes that they found on the workbench? Let's turn the page and find out. A customer liked the shoes so much that he paid twice the price. Do you see the beautiful shoes that the shoemaker and his wife found on the workbench? What does it mean that the customer paid twice the price? That means if the shoemaker would only have sold them for $1, the customer paid $2 instead. The shoemaker used the money to buy more leather. Remember, leather is the material that the shoemaker uses to make the shoes. The next morning, he found 2 pairs of shoes. Who is helping us? The shoemaker and his wife wondered. Who do you think is helping the shoemaker and his wife? Let's keep reading and find out if you're right. "Let's stay up tonight," said the shoemaker's wife. They hid and waited. Why are the shoemaker and his wife staying up tonight? Why do you think they had to hide while they waited? Let's keep reading and find out why they stayed up and why they hid. Is this the shoemaker and his wife? Then who are these people? Look how large the shoes look next to these people. Do you see the shoemaker and his wife in this picture? They're hiding somewhere. Let's read the words and find out who these people are and why the shoemaker and his wife are hiding. At midnight, 2 tiny elves tiptoed inside. 2 tiny elves. They were dressed in tattered clothes and wore no shoes. The elves made beautiful shoes. Then they tiptoed out of the workshop. When the shoemaker and his wife stayed up, what were they trying to find out? They wanted to know who was helping them make the beautiful shoes. Well, who was it that was making those beautiful shoes? It was 2 tiny elves. So are the elves in this story hurtful or helpful? These elves are being very helpful. We must help these kind elves. I will make them some warm clothes, said the shoemaker's wife. And I will make them each a fine pair of shoes, the shoemaker replied. That night they put the presents on the workbench. They hid and waited. Why did the shoemaker and his wife want to make clothes and shoes for the tiny elves? They wanted to help the elves because the elves were helping them. And when they saw the elves the night before, the elves' clothes were torn and they didn't have any shoes. So the shoemaker and his wife thought making them clothes and shoes would be a great way to help them. Why do you think that the shoemaker and his wife hid and waited on the second night? They already know who's helping them. Let's read and find out. At midnight, the elves tiptoed into the room. They laughed with delight. They put on their new clothes and shoes and danced right out the door. The shoemaker and his wife lived happily ever after. A lot of times, in a traditional tale or fairy tale, we can learn something from what happened. In this story, we can see that when the elves helped the shoemaker and his wife, the shoemaker and his wife helped the elves in return. Helping people can make everyone happier. I hope you enjoyed this fairy tale or traditional tale of the elves and the shoemaker.